Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome. Come on in, have a seat, get comfy. It's time for another episode of the Extra Credits Book Club podcast with me, Decker, and also Night Mother. We're finishing a book that has been a curse upon us
Yeah, it really has been.
for what amounts to like 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's
It
been
feels longer.
it was longer, but usually 4 episodes is about 2 months.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, last time it was a whole mess. We were pulling our hair out
Mm-hmm.
because the story decided it was going to both get exciting and also spin its wheels.
Yeah, and still give us backstory we never asked for.
Yeah. And the I don't even know where to start. Last
Yeah.
week it ended with Nina, our resident heartrender come super spy, who thought she was being a clever little busybody
Mm-hmm.
in seducing Joseph Mengele for all intents and purposes. And it turns out that, Joseph Mengele is a lot smarter than she gave him credit for. And he
Mm-hmm.
was like, ha ha ha, I knew it was you the whole time.
Yeah.
Now you're in
Recognized her.
now you're in our secret laboratory prison.
Yeah, she walked right into an open cell
And
and was closed. It closed behind her, and she was like, "What?
how could this
But I'm
happen?
the spy.
Yeah.
I have the one up on you."
And it's semi like the big reveal is that it was Matthias that gave her away.
Yeah. To the
Uh,
surprise
who
of no one.
who teleported.
Yeah. So, okay, the last time we hear about Kaz and Matthias, they're like hanging out near the sacred ash tree in like
Yeah,
the inner court. But then all of a sudden in these chapters, we're hearing that they were in a ballroom this whole time,
yeah.
which has never been mentioned before.
Never once. They straight up like the last chapter. They're near the sacred ash, on rooftops,
Yeah.
and they've
And like
teleported to a
outdoors.
ballroom retroactively. Teleported to a ballroom so that Leah Bardugo could have Matthias here for a big twist that
Yeah.
is only a twist if the reader base didn't see it coming, but everybody knew.
He was
Everyone.
pretty open about it the whole time. And his whole like inner monologue was fantasizing about killing and capturing Nina.
Yeah.
And then she sees him through like the glass of her cell and she's like, "How?
How could you do this to me?
What do you mean, how?"
But this batch of chapters starts with Matthias, who sort of retroactively explains how he got there. And
Mhm.
it's pretty lazy, folks. Don't do that. If you're writing a book, don't explain things after they've already happened. It's lazy.
Mhm.
You have to establish how things happen.
She hasn't done that once though. Why start now?
Yeah, true. Also, the allegory of the Fierdans and Grisha being Nazi Jews
Mhm.
is getting thinner and thinner and more transparent to the point where she might as well just start using those words.
Yeah.
Because she, like, Matthias, I think Matthias explains Or no, Joseph Mengele explains that he's like, yes, this was our secret laboratory for science experiments and also torture at the same time because two birds with one stone is great.
Yeah, he talks about how the Grisha were born to be used as servants and slaves to
Yeah,
the Fjordans, the soldiers of Djel or whatever their
yeah.
wellspring god is called. And Matthias is like, what?
This seems
As if he
extreme.
didn't know. Like, as if
Right,
he didn't spend his whole life believing that.
right. A dude who firmly had his hand on the chode of this culture.
Mhm.
And suddenly he's like, what? We're treating the Grisha poorly?
Yeah, we're
This is
using them?
news
I
to
thought we
me.
He, in his mind, was like, "Oh, I thought we just senselessly murdered them." Like, and I was down with that. But you mean to tell me that you're keeping them alive and doing experiments on them in these cells? That's a step too far.
Right. And during this absurd interrogation, where it's clear that Leah Bardugo forgot that there should be exposition, so she just kind of like spilled it all on the table and then just said, there you go. There's
Yeah.
all that. Because as he's being choked out, Joseph Mengele does his like dastardly villain shit, where he's like, "I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids."
Mhm. Yeah, because Matthias, like, turns on Jarl Brum, or whatever his name is, and
Yeah,
chokes him out, and we find out that he told Kaz wait, do we find out about that? No, we don't find out about that yet. Um, he, like, it seems like he's going along with it, but then he's having this internal monologue where he's, like, seeing the disdain for the Grisha was, like, him having a moment of, like, what it felt to be Nina when he was saying really mean shit to her, and now he's feeling all this shame and regret, and he says something to Broom when he's, like after he's unconscious, he's like, "The hate the life you lead, the hate you feel. It's poison, I can drink it no longer." And it's so over the top dramatic. But it's
yeah.
crazy because this man has he's not a man, he's a child. He was essentially born into this cult, and if I know anything about cults and, like, what the deprogramming process is like for ex-cult members, there's never one moment of epiphany where everything's different and you can just reject the indoctrination that you've had your whole life and walk away, like,
No,
there's a process.
you don't understand. He realized.
Of course, right.
He
That was it.
yeah. It's all you gotta do is flip the switch from a bad person to or a good guy who gets it.
Right. I didn't take that part into account.
They also they also I feel like they have to have had or had to have pressed Jarl Broom into telling him where Yul Bayor is, and
Right, they
he
right.
he essentially goes, "Oh yes, he's fine. He's continuing the work of his father." And right there, eagle-eyed viewers, is when you go, "Oh, he's dead."
Yeah.
But the rest of the characters in the book are like, "Great,
I didn't know he had a dad.
yeah." And then Matthias has a little reflection moment where he kind of like stands in one like anytime a character in this book has like a inner thought, inner monologue, they start thinking about things that aren't pertinent to the moment.
Always.
The way that it happens can only be described as they stand like whatever they were doing before, they stop doing it. They stand perfectly still and then just kind of like work through it.
Yeah,
because
it's like a
nothing
"That's so
happens.
Raven" moment.
Yeah, where she goes inside of their dumb mind palace and works it out and is completely outside of the book
Mhm.
because no one else goes, "Hello, we're in the middle of something."
Yeah,
Because
they're
a
in there
lot of
for lunch.
times, a lot of times when they start their ponderances, it's a long time.
Yeah, and always in a very time-sensitive situation,
Always.
like being mid-drowning or in the middle of a gunfight.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but any gunfight I've been in, usually my focus is on the task at hand.
I'm always incredibly present in the middle of a gunfight.
It's good.
But basically, he leaves Broom locked in a cell, and
Yeah.
I think that's the end of the chapter, and he kinda just
Uh,
fucks off to go
yeah,
find Nina.
because Matthias does his little mind palace thing talking about how that he could not believe the heinous things that were going on in this laboratory and how those very same things could have happened to Nina and Jesper.
Mhm. The people
Which
he loves the most.
I'm gonna be honest and say that I'm not convinced that this book at any point explained that Jesper is a Grisha to anybody else.
Okay, so I wasn't sure either, and I went back and I found the part in the book when the boys are in the boys' prison and they're talking amongst themselves about Jesper being a fabricator. Because Matthias is asking Jesper what he's doing, and he's like, "I'm doing an ancient Zemini ritual of lockpicking or whatever." And Matthias is like, "Whoa, really?" And he's like, "No." And then he like starts pulling out little pieces of fabric or metal from the lock or whatever
Yeah.
to make a lockpick, and that's when Matthias finds out.
Okay. Which means that it nullifies like 4 of my notes in this group of chapters because I must have missed that, and also it's been it has been stuck deep in my craw. But the next chapter is Jesper, and I don't remember what happens in it. I
It's a
just re-
page long.
I just remember that Jesper does like the Magneto, like, I'm gonna start a
Oh.
group of special people and they'll fight against the injustices that the special people have to endure. And I'm like, okay, Magneto, let's settle down
Yeah,
with
him
your
and
fucking
Wyland.
Brotherhood of Mutants, okay?
They've just initiated Black Protocol, and they're trying to figure out what to do next, and they're kind of just being like, "Okay, where's Kaz? He didn't tell us the plan." And they see a group of Shu Grisha come through who are on Parem, and they start attacking soldiers by removing their blood, and then they, like, literally fabricate or I think there may be tide makers or there's some kind of Grisha, but they managed to just pull the blood out of the bodies of these soldiers, and then they just collapse all desiccated on the ground, and they start doing it to Jesper and Wylan, but Jesper uses his fabricator skills to pull the metal out of, like, their outfits or something, and then to stick it in their
Right,
bodies, and
right.
they die.
He
It's
turns like
very
the
violent.
yeah, he turns like the buttons and stuff into tiny little fragments and then just like shreds them.
Yeah, and they try to turn to mist to get away from it, but they can't 'cause the metal's too small.
Yeah. It's
So
really
he
violent.
violently murders some people and then continues on his way.
And then we're back to Nina, thank God.
Yay. The
And
true lead.
this whole chapter is Nina and Matthias reconnecting. Anyway, moving on. Just kidding. I have a
I
lot of great notes for this chapter
Good.
because they share a moment where they like touch each other's faces and like, do the thing where they touch foreheads like it's very sensitive and cute.
Like, literally.
And I forget what he said to her.
Do you want the quote?
Yeah.
He says, "I have been made to protect you. Only in death will I be kept from this oath."
And she says she knew then that they were done with fear.
When he gives her the same oath he gave his little SS group when he
Yeah.
became a Druskella. So, like, the same oath he took to continually hunt and murder Grisha, he's now giving to Nina, and she sees that as the final seal in their relationship and not something deeply problematic.
Right. It is no different than, you know, a former a Gestapo who just quit. Former SS. He was, he was at the in the building when they were discussing the final solution, and then uses the motto to his new Jew girlfriend, and it's like, yikes!
Yeah, it's really bad, and she sees no issue with
She
this.
loves it
Sh
because
It's like the best thing he could have said in her
she
mind.
finally fixed him.
Mhm. He
Uh,
finally became the boy she always knew he was.
and also they are about to share like an actual emotional moment instead of like this confirmation of their feelings. And she tells a joke, like a
Oh,
really
yeah.
rude one, completely undercutting any kind of emotional moment, like Marvel loves to do.
Yeah.
Um, and then they start talking about how like, we'll never like declaration that they'll never hurt anybody who doesn't deserve it or something stupid like that.
Oh, because they go to find Yulbayer and they realize that it's his son in the laboratory who doesn't know doesn't know the formula for Jerta Parem, but he thinks he can maybe recreate it. And I think that's when they start doing that because
Yeah, that's right.
they were, like, definitely gonna murder the the scientist at first because reasons. They were like, "He can't fall into the hand like, this drug
Yeah,
can't continue to be made, the knowledge has to be lost," and we find out that the reason that the drug was made was an accident because he was trying to figure out how to conceal his son's Grisha powers, and both of them, I think, are fabricators, but instead he created like Grisha LSD slash
yeah.
meth and
It turns out it's
there's
the limitless drug.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And he doesn't want to continue the research and he doesn't think that anybody should be forced to take this drug. So even though they're still debating on whether or not they're going to try and kill a kid, they decide not
Right.
to.
And let's not gloss over the fact that there is no fewer than 2 paragraphs where Nina is doing mental gymnastics to justify killing a child in
Mhm.
cold blood who has not done anything except be a prisoner his whole life.
And she knows he's a Grisha at that point too, and she's always, like, positioning herself as, like, champion avenger of the Grisha,
Yeah. And
and she's
she's
like, "I
trying to
might kill a
like
kid."
talk herself both like into doing it. Yeah, it's mostly into doing it. Before
Yeah,
she's like, "No, I can't." And also she finds out finally that he is a Grisha, I think, which is the linchpin of why she decides not to do it,
mhm.
and is completely shocked. She's like, "You're a Grisha?" It's like, what is it with Nina specifically? Also, to a degree, other Grisha, but they cannot believe that there are other Grisha in this world other than them.
I know, and they meet them all the time, they're literally everywhere.
Yeah, it is a common concept of this universe that has been created. They comprise an entire army. The whole reason they're there is because a drug makes them see, past, present, and future. The spice melange.
Yeah. Yeah. It's honestly like traveling anywhere as a Canadian, and they're like, "You're from Canada? What?" But
Yeah,
there's like we're like a literal we're a big fucking
there's a
country,
lot of you.
and there's a lot of us, and they're like, "Whoa, from Canada?"
I think that stems from the fact that our accents are so similar that
Yeah,
when it's revealed that you're from a different country, they expect you to speak like the Swedish chef or something.
yeah.
Also, at some point, Nina starts crying,
Who cares?
and I made a note with a quote
Oh, right.
that says, "She says it was embarrassingly easy to let the tears flow," and I made a note that that's because Nina has never felt a real emotion before, so it's very easy to mimic.
Right, yeah. And is it when they get captured and she's crying for her own safety?
No.
Okay.
And they also mention that Matthias was a leader of the Druskella, which has never been mentioned before,
No.
because when he's introduced, they make it seem like he's a fresh-born babe who's
Mhm.
learning the ropes.
Yeah, and he's like, what? I think he's 17 or 18. I think he's 17. So how the fuck are you gonna tell me that this child is like a leader in this elite group of Fjerdan soldiers where it
Maybe
seems like their only output in the workforce is becoming a soldier? I
he was
really
a
don't
part of the Broom Youth, the
yeah.
the Fjerdan Boy Scout program that grooms
Mhm.
you for the military.
Right.
Also, genocide.
Mhm.
Convenient byproduct. And then Kaz shows up in one of the
Well,
greatest
yeah.
Deus Ex Machinas I've ever had the displeasure of reading. I always thought it was something that everybody knew not to do. Because the concept of a Deus Ex Machina, if you are unfamiliar, is when a problem in a narrative is solved through impossible means. Like, I think it literally means, uh,
God out of the machine.
yeah,
It's
where,
a Greek theater term. They used to do it. They literally did that in ancient Greek theater. They would have like an actual mechanism where the gods would just come in and scoop people out of dire situations
yeah,
and like to avoid having to problem solve. And then it just became a literary term.
one that should be avoided at all costs. Like, it's considered poor form and terrible, terrible writing to have a Deus Ex Machina in there, and old Leah Bardugo managed to do it
I feel
because
like she's my favorite thing to do.
Kaz comes out of nowhere with a veritable bounty of lockpicks, and you're thinking, where'd he get those? He doesn't say, but he uses them to get everyone out of the problem that they're in.
Which is being surrounded and captured by a group of Driscolla wearing cloaks, and they, like, lasso Nina, and she's, like, having a rough go. She like, her hands are bound so she can't heart rend, and Matthias is like, "But you were my brothers." And then Kaz throws he like one of the Drusilla in the cloak, his eyes start bleeding or some shit, and then Kaz, like, whips off his hood, and he's been one of these Drusilla the whole time.
Yep.
And then some incredibly crazy shit happens. There's an explosion, and their sacred tree falls over, and then Kaz, Nina, and Kuwei, is that how they pronounce this kid's
Yeah.
name? They all jump down this pit that that is present underneath the sacred ash tree
Right.
into nothingness.
Now, it's important to note that Kaz being disguised as a Drusilla, having all of those lockpicks to get them out, and the bomb that he planted on the sacred ash were never established.
No.
They just occur.
Yeah.
And then we move into Kaz's chapter where she retroactively establishes everything that just happened.
But not even the cloak. I feel like that's never mentioned again.
No. How Kaz got in with the Drusilla is not mentioned.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough how poor this is. Like, this is bad. And this was reviewed very well by critics who read literature for a living.
Yeah. NPR gave it a glowing review, which I don't know the pedigree. It's like the New York Times book review says this is what fantasy is for. NPR said a world that feels real enough to have its own passport stamp.
Yuck. What a terrible terrible sizzle quote.
I think my favorite one is the darker it gets for the good guys, the better. Entertainment Weekly.
Entertainment Weekly would know quality anything if it sat on
I
them.
know.
And this is when I went on like a diatribe in my notes, where I mentioned nothing about the chapter at hand. I just write, okay, I understand how Leah Bardugo is writing this now. I get it. I see the method. And she doesn't know how to solve a problem, so she magically solves it, going the old Deus Ex Machina route, and then she sets it down for a day, maybe a 2, and has a ponder. And instead of going back through the book and like sprinkling the solution that she came up with throughout the book, she just dedicates the next chapter to explain, oh, by the way, he had it like, it's the literary equivalent of when you're little kids playing superheroes, and one kid's like, I use my ice beam, and another one's like, you can't because I have an ice shield. It's like, fuck you, kid.
Yeah.
It's no different.
It's the same formula.
She says, oh, I solved it because Kaz smuggled just a fistful of fucking lockpicks in his stomach. Like Solid Snake smuggling cigarettes in his stomach. It's so outrageous! And you can't just throw them up. They'll get stuck.
And it's not just lockpicks. It's a handful of bombs that he's also swallowed, as well as a bunch of other tablets of like the gas or whatever that they threw in the pee buckets to create the chloroform gas. Like he's throwing up a full inventory of supplies, and somehow he's not caught, even though this is a very populated courtyard, ballroom, wherever they are. He's just retching for what has to be a good 20 minutes. And then we never find out how he falls in with a Drusilla, but he is like, there's this whole thing about how Kaz knew Matthias wouldn't actually betray them because he'd gambled on Matthias's feelings for Nina because love is the most powerful force in the universe.
And the best part was the real cherry on top of this whole scenario where we're assaulted with Leah Bardugo retroactively establishing things that have not been. Kaz says, quote, and the rest is improv. To say that I hit pause on the audiobook and went for a walk is, boy, I was white hot mad. I was like, ooh, don't ever show your face around here again. Ooh. But the whole plot of this particular chapter is that when the ash tree explodes, everyone's like, no, the sacred tree.
Mm,
And in the confusion, they leap off of a cliff into the spring.
like an underground river that Kaz gambled would be there. He was
Yeah.
based on he knowing that the ceremony that happens around that tree is when the Druskella hear the voice of the god. So he's like, "Aha, there must be a secret river underneath there that gets everyone that flows out of the ice court."
Yeah.
There is no fucking way that he knew that.
Especially not like on the way down, because this is all worked out in the second and a half it takes someone to walk off of a cliff.
Yeah.
But everybody hits the water, and turns out that the underground river's current is fucking strong, as they often are.
Mhm.
And everybody gets pulled under, and they've got their dumb gillyweed
Yeah.
in the back of their mouth,
But it only lasts 10 minutes instead of 2 hours.
which is this is something that she had established before. The gillyweed, or whatever it's called.
Baleen, I think? I think he
Yeah.
just stole it from Wales.
Baleen or something.
Right.
And it only lasts 10 minutes. Sure. Okay, fine. The second that Kaz hits the water, he's drowning. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't have enough oxygen, even though he activates it,
Mhm.
and he falls unconscious.
Yeah, he reminisces about Inej for a little while. He's, like,
Yeah.
fantasizing about Inej as he's drowning, and then he, like, opens his mouth and swallows a bunch of water. It's all very bitch. Like, we basically like, he's, like, thinking about Inej and her new purpose, basically, I think the whole time.
Yeah. And as he's, like, cresting into the unconscious, he gets that, like, euphoric lying in the meadow when like, the end of Gladiator when he's back in the wheat fields
The
again.
wheat yeah. Running his hands through it.
Like, he gets that, and he, quote, are you ready for this fucking quote? He was a boy again, sure that there was magic in this world. And I immediately wrote, what the fuck do you mean the magic is real
Yeah, there's
in this
sorcerers living
world?
among them.
He knows like 5 of them.
But
But he's
maybe he
unconscious
means,
now,
like
so who gives a fuck?
yeah, I think he means real magic, though, like, when he does his card tricks. But I think it's in response to seeing Inej feeding birds, and, like, the sun is glinting through her hair, and she's, like, laughing at him, and she's got nice eyeliner on or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I like to think that Leah Bardugo forgot she was writing a fantasy novel. Because it would track.
Yeah, she's been remarkably inconsistent.
Yeah, and sh- credit where credit is due. Shadow and Bone was not great, but at least it was consistent-ish.
And it's so wild because all the people that love this book say that Shadow and Bone, they're like, "That was fine, but this is where it's, like, really, really good."
That's where
And
she
I'm like, "What the
fucking
fuck?"
wheels fell off.
There is nothing about this book that is compelling.
No.
Like,
But
I
now,
would recommend this to no one. I would recommend Shadow and Bone to people, I would not recommend this book to anybody. There's no need for this book to exist.
No, there really isn't. Like, make this a short story. Have it, like, release it online for your dumb fans. And then write the real book once that stuff is established. Oh, wait.
Yeah,
Doesn't know what that is. Never mind.
true.
But we're on to Inej now, who's
In
still
part 6.
captured.
Right, and everyone forgot about
Who's
her.
still captured. And hey, remember last time when her and Nina were sneaking into the party, and then Inej got captured, and Nina was like, "Bye, see you later. Hope you get out." When Nina met up with everybody else, she mentioned neither hair nor hide of Inej. Just fuck her. See ya.
Yeah,
Good luck
she's
on your
gone.
endeavors.
She's gone now.
Um, and I don't remember what the context is, but I know she's getting rushed around. Like someone's got her in the grab that you grab women by to immobilize them. The old bicep, grab them here. Can't do anything about
Right.
it.
Right.
And that's science. Take it from
Yeah.
me, a man.
A scientist.
Yeah. But just when you think that the dumb bullshit is over, no, because Jesper telepathically knew where Inej was and came to her rescue.
Yeah, and this place is fucking huge. It is a huge cake-shaped maze.
Not only did
And
Jesper not know that she'd been captured, but how could he possibly know where she'd being kept?
it doesn't matter at this point.
No. And they're doing like, aren't they in disguise? Like they're doing the three kids in a trench coat trick.
I think so, yeah.
The
I
wheels
think the
have fucking
important
come off.
Oh, fully. And the important thing that we find out in this chapter, important, is that Kaz told Inej to find a really big diamond and then get somewhere. And I can't remember, or like be in a courtyard at this time or something.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a way of retroactively explaining how the three of them found each other. But at the same time, we never find out what the instructions were given to Jesper and Wylan were. So
Right.
it's all very convenient, but they save her. And the diamond that Inej stole was the one on Tante Helene's choker, like her prize diamond.
Yeah.
And they decide to use it as a drill bit.
Yeah. To break through bulletproof glass.
Right. Grisha made glass to get into an armory, but they're waylaid by a group of soldiers. And, like, they're doing a very poor job of drilling through this glass, it's taking them forever, and they're doing, like, the burglar thing of, like, making the perfect circles that they can, like, punch through it,
Yeah.
and then Inej does her fucking acrobatics move and, like, slow motion dives horizontally through this tiny hole in the glass and lands inside a tank. She doesn't land inside it, but she, like, grabs on I think she climbs up something, swings from a chandelier or some shit,
Yeah. It's
and
all
there's a
very
tank
dramatic.
in the room. Yeah. Another thing, there's no fucking way Kaz could have accounted for this plan. How does he
Okay.
know what's in the armory? There's, like, no mention of Matthias sharing that information
Right.
with him.
Because if you remember, Matthias said, "Sure, I can tell you what I know, but my knowledge of that place is incomplete."
Yeah, because he didn't even spend that much time there. He was, like, out on the fucking fjords
Yeah.
killing Grisha and, like, pillaging villages or whatever.
But Kaz had the frame of mind to apparently, now it's never explicitly said, but it's implied that he planned for Inej to get captured. He planned for Helene to see Inej, to capture her. He knew that Helene would have that dope ass diamond on her. and he knew that they would be taken to a room next to the armory with bulletproof glass, and a diamond such as that would be just enough to cut through that glass, and that they would do it, and she could jump through in a cool matrix dodge to find a tank. He knew! He
Yeah,
had it
he
all
got
worked out up here.
Mhm. As per usual. But they
And
steal
then
a
they,
tank.
yeah, and then they proceed to do the, when James Bond drove the tank through St. Petersburg. Just
Right.
smashing everything in its path.
Yeah.
Oh, we're back to Nina again.
Mhm.
And
Yay.
they're, everybody's gathered around Kaz because his bitch ass fell unconscious again. Because I wrote in my notes that Kaz is unconscious more in this book than ladies of esteem in 19th century literature. And they faint a lot.
All the time. Their corsets were really tight. Kaz doesn't even have
He
the
doesn't even have
excuse that
one.
his oxygen's cut off.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a bustle.
He comes up against any adversity and he's out like a light.
Yeah.
He's a fainting goat with delusions of grandeur.
He needs those fucking wolfed salts or whatever they had at the beginning of the book.
And everybody, as they're like resuscitating Kaz, which just involves them standing around him going like, is he gonna be okay? Even though
Yeah.
Nina's a heart render and can probably like help.
But then she does her usual trick being like, "But if I had enough time, I would be able to do this
Yeah, of
properly, but
course.
I don't have enough time because I'm under pressure and if you didn't know, I'm basically half naked right now and I'm
Oh
so
yeah.
wet from the stream,
Her
everyone."
absolutely massive titties are just on display, boys. And
The fabric is
those
clinging.
gorgeous gams. Ooh. Look out. You've never seen a more beautiful creature in all your days. Just ask her.
Never. Mm. Yeah. But Kaz wakes up and he's, like, immediately ungrateful. But
Yeah, of
then he
course.
starts getting really hyped because he thinks that, like, they've fucking made it. They hear the tank,
Yeah.
they see the boys and girl in the tank, but then all of a sudden there's like 1,500 other tanks following. But
Which,
don't worry because they've rigged the bridge. When did they do that?
don't worry about it.
Was it ever talked about?
No.
When did they have time to set up these? Like, they had
Never. They
one bridge.
didn't. We're just going to have to accept that Leah wrote this on fucking Adderall
I
and just
I don't think there's any
blasted
other
through.
explanation.
Just blasted through the last like 20 chapters. Just.
Yeah.
And like, there. This is a point of contention for me, okay? The fact that everyone cannot believe that an entire tank brigade is rolling over the hill to chase after them when A, destroyed their most important cultural artifact, the sacred ash tree, destroyed their prisons probably. I think they've smashed up a bunch of shit there. Drove an entire tank through the entire courtyard. Probably smashed up a bunch of shit there. And they went, what? Why are they mad?
And what happened to everybody who was just attending this party? Because if we know
She
anything
forgot.
about the structure of of the ice court, there's choke points. There's like one bridge that gets everybody in and out of this main area. And there's a lot of very important political figures. The entire Fjerdan royal court is there, and they're never mentioned again. And
Yeah.
somehow Fjerda has enough soldiers ready to mobilize at the drop of a hat to jump into a fuck ton of tanks, and then also, like, the rest of them that they come up against.
Yep.
How?
Hey, great question.
Like,
um,
because the tank is rolling through, and they make it to the harbor, I think.
Before that, when the tank with Inej, Jesper, and Wylan, and also no, that's it. I lied. When it's coming over the hill, Kat says, "It worked. The plan worked."
Yeah.
And I wrote some vile shit in this notes. I'm not gonna read it to you because it's mad. I
I
was
think you
mad.
should still read it.
No, I'm not going to. But it amounts to what fucking plan?
Mhm.
And my next note is also me getting frustrated that Leah, in this particular chapter, and in all of the excitement, we'll say, Leah Bardugo has leaned on one word more times than I could count, and it was starting to give me a headache. And that word is sounded as an adverb.
Yes.
The explosion sounded, the tank sounded, the gunfire sounded. Like, there's other words.
But none that she likes better.
I mean, it tells you exactly what's happening. Sound is ing.
It sure is. And how? That's up to your interpretation.
But anyway, they make their way down to the harbor,
Mhm.
imagining in all of their delusions. Despite being surprised by the tank battalion chasing them, they thought that going to the harbor was going to be just a fucking breeze. And then again are surprised when they see another, like, an entire battalion of soldiers waiting for them there. And it's like, where were you gonna go? There aren't planes. This is an
Yeah.
island, you boob. And they're like, oh no, what do we do? And at this moment, I said Nina's gonna take Perem because she's gotta find a way to make it all about her.
There was never going to be a world where this story happened and Nina did not take Parem.
And everybody tries to stop her, and she's like, no, I have to. Like,
Yeah.
this is my main character moment.
Yeah. I have to see what I'm capable of.
And this is how we find out that Jurda Perem is just the limitless drug.
And basically LSD. Like the way that she's describing what she can see and feel, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's acid."
Yeah. Which Leah probably heard from someone else. Someone else probably recounted their experience, and she was like, wow, that's so interesting.
Can you like tell me more about that?
And what follows probably looked and sounded great to Leah Bardugo, but on paper, it is one of the lamest, unexciting action sequences I've ever read. And I read The Kingdom of the Wicked.
Was there an action sequence in that book?
Yeah.
Oh, with the
Remember?
serpents.
No, remember when he was fighting the invisible people?
Oh, I forgot.
And he was just like,
Oh yeah, the
doing,
Bell Witch scene.
yeah, when he was just doing his like fucking dope ass moves to nothing. Just
Right. I totally forgot about that.
but that had me laughing because what was being described was so stupid and like a
Mhm.
little kid pretending to fight bad guys that it amused me to no end. But this, it's basically Mm, every X-Men movie that has ever been, like Magneto rises up into the air, holding out his arms like Christ. Dr. Manhattan, it's all of that. And
But
she just like
worse.
waves her hand and people turn into paste. It's so bad.
She's getting shot a bunch and she like expels the bullets and heals herself. Matthias gets shot. She pulls the bullet out of him. She like flicks her wrist and the other heart render that they brought with them. His eyes explode and she like tells the legions of soldiers to just sleep and they
Yes,
do.
go sleepies.
And then they start walking towards the harbor and then Jarl Brum and the rest of his fucking SS agents come up and they're like, "You can't control us, witch. We have special armor."
Yeah, and then she's like, "Oh, okay. Well, we're leaving now." And he's like, "Gah, curses."
Yeah. I didn't anticipate that.
Ay ay ay. Time for an edge again.
But I think I think isn't it Matthias now?
No, Matthias was the one narrating Nina's fucking
Oh,
Magneto
right, of
moment.
course. Right,
Because
right. But
nobody's
because
chapter is
she
about themselves.
of course. Ew, but then he's like, "Nina, you taught me to be something better. Don't kill Jarl Brum." And
Ugh.
she's like, "Okay, I won't." But and then, of course, so, like, like, the whole point about Jirta Parem is that when they're on it, they're like these insane monsters who have no self-control. It's like in Twilight um, when there's, like, a newborn vampire, and they're just, like, rabid and crazy, but, of
Oh,
course, the,
right.
like, hot self-insert main character could never,
Yeah.
like, uh, embarrass themselves with that level of poor decorum. So, like,
Yeah.
Nina on Jirta Parem is like when Bella turns into a vampire and just has this unexplained super self-control. She's just like this godlike figure walking around, speaking in what I imagine is a very echoey voice
Yeah.
and being like, "Yeah, everything's fine," and, like, has all this certainty because she's so powerful and none of the bad side effects of this drug that makes you crazy.
Yeah. It's very Galadriel, look upon me in despair.
Yeah.
Which is, I knew it was going to happen too, because every instance of Grisha taking Jurdaparem has made them into like mindless zombies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, she's not going to have any of that. She's going to be like completely in control, like exponentially powerful than everybody else who's ever taken it.
Yeah, and, like, I the amount like, the build up, the most, like, description she's ever done before an event is her describing how Nina is soaked and her clothes are, like, mostly
Yeah.
off of her, and, like, it's
Super.
all to set us up for, like, her power coma moment where she's, like, expelling bullets and dripping wet and, like, making legions of soldiers fall asleep, but her clothes are barely on, and
Yeah,
it's
her
like
titties are out for sure, bro. It's super. Nina went from being marginally sexualized to full on. You can see her vagina in this chapter,
It's
and it's just like,
it's
stop,
wide open.
stop it. There's no need. But the good news is that after all of that, everything's perfectly fine, and there are no trouble. There's not a spot of trouble on the boat ride home. Everybody
No,
just kind of
none.
gets to sit around and chat, and
Yeah, and of
also
course,
go ahead.
there's, like, this caveat that if you take Jertaparem one time, that's, like, your one chance to not get addicted, but, like, every other instance in the book has been, like, you take it once, and it's all over for you,
Yeah,
but Nina can take it once, and she's got, like, a hall pass for it,
you take it one time, you're hooked for life. Take it
but not Nina.
more than 5 times, you die. But less than five
Like
times, you'll never get off it.
yeah.
And And if but trying to quit, the withdrawal will kill you. Anyway,
Yeah.
hey, go. That was from Alien Private Eye, ladies and gentlemen. Go watch that movie.
Please.
The titular main character, Alien Private Eye, was describing some outrageously made up drug that kills you no matter what. But
I totally forgot about that.
Inej is looking over the, like, just wistfully looking at the horizon, thinking about how dope her pirate company's gonna be, and it's like, oh my god.
That's right. And she's, like, learning knots and shit
Yeah,
and, like, be like,
sailors
"So, how does a ship work?"
sailors are begrudgingly teaching her knots, and she's like, I'm gonna have the best ship on the seas, and we're gonna like beat up so many slavers, and like our crew's just gonna be so, we're gonna high five so much all the time, and our
Yeah.
sails are gonna like have super cool designs on them. And then she has a conversation with Kaz where they're really, like, the book is really trying to pretend that this relationship is viable in any way.
Well, it's like any relationship in this book where everybody needs the other person to change a fundamental piece of who they are in
Yeah.
order for them to be a viable partner for them. And it's like when that doesn't happen, they're like, "Well, what the fuck? I told you what you needed to change." And you eat like in Matthias's case, he's done it for now. And
Right.
then in Kaz's case,
He'll
he
never do it.
can't because it's not who he is.
Also, to have one relationship in a book where characters are presented as an example of like, hey, look, this is not how relationships are supposed to go. Like you're not. This isn't like an ultimatum. I'm not changing anything about me. To have a group that's like that, where they're super toxic, and the book knows it, is fine. Like that's good. But when every character in a relationship has that same kind of toxic, you have to change for me attitude, is pretty telling, Leah.
And it's like present in a lot of her other books too. Because the
Uh-oh.
whole point, like, with Alina and Mal in Shadow and Bone, the major point of contention between the 2 of them was Alina's growing power and hunger for these amplifiers, and Mal was like, "Don't worry, like, we don't have to go after the 3rd one, or, like, we'll get the collar off of you as soon as possible." And Alina's like, "No, like, I like the color, I like this power." But then when she has to kill Mal as the 3rd amplifier and her power gets dispersed among the rest of, like, the Grisha who are fighting in this battle, she loses all her power, and then magically they can be together forever because a fundamental piece of her was taken away by other means.
Ugh.
It's very ick. But there's a moment before Kaz and Inej have this conversation where Inej approaches Nina on the prow of the ship when she's still kind of quietly in her power coma. Um, and they continue to fail the Bechdel test where they're
Yeah.
having a conversation, and then Nina's like, "I hear Kaz's breathing hitch every time he looks at you." And she's like, "What does
Oh, I
Matthias's
forgot.
breathing do when he looks at you?" She's like nothing." But then, like,
He's a
just
mouth
the fact
breather.
yeah, they can't have any conversation without being like, "So what would Matthias think about this?" Or like, "How
Yeah.
does Kaz look at you?" And then she's like, "I'm gonna go find him before it gets really bad," because 'cause they're all preparing for Nina to have this, like, really intense withdrawal experience. And then she has a conversation with Kaz before he approaches Inej, where he says something to her and she, like, recoils and looks very alarmed and mad, and then walks off. And we don't find out really what the conversation was about, but Inej and Kaz are talking, and he's like, "I just needed her to do some more work," basically, but we don't know what work that is.
Right. More like, it's one thing for characters to lie to each other, but we as an audience get bored if the characters continue to lie to us too.
Yeah, and I think it's really telling coming from the author's perspective where, like, I don't actually know if she knows that the characters are lying.
Right.
And it just really shows, like, a lack of overall self-awareness.
Yeah, she's not much of a big picture viewer.
No.
It seems to be a seat of her pants, which I can't talk shit on that. I also write by the seat of my pants, but I have a kind of a general idea of what the big picture is up in the old dumb brain.
And hers changes all the time to suit whatever situation she's trying to force.
Or two.
Like, she's strong-arming situations and relationships for no reason. Like,
Because they
she's
have
got
to. They have
but,
to
like,
be in there.
why?
Well, why else is anybody going to read her book? The kids, the youngs adults, only want to read romances that are completely skewing how romance is actually supposed to be.
Yeah, but, like, she does an exceptionally bad job. Like, even as a teenager, I think I would have not liked this. And, like, I read Twilight as a teenager, and
I
I was
liked it.
into it. Yeah, I was like, "This is fucking dope. Love vampires." I will go so far out of my way to enjoy a love story. And her and Matthias's relationship, I fucking hated every second of it. At no point was I like, "I ship this." Like, it's so,
Yeah.
so, 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 so toxic from the first moment, and, like, it never gets any less toxic. Just because they decide they like each other now doesn't make it
Yeah.
better.
Usually, enemies to lovers isn't instantly violent. Like, they're
Yeah.
just like, ooh, I hate that bitch. I don't like her one bit. And ooh, he's so rude and mean, but so hot.
Yeah,
And in this,
Vampire Diaries does a better job of enemies to
yeah.
lovers
And
with Damon and Elena
in
than
this,
this.
the first interaction that these two have is him trying to squeeze the life out of her.
Yeah,
But anyway,
and the
um,
first time she meets him, he calls her a dog, and
right.
she's like, "Oh, his eyes are like stars,"
Yeah, I forgot
or
about that.
some shit.
Which she took great offense to, even though she was being threatened
She's
with
like,
gang rape minutes earlier.
yeah. She's like, "What, you don't think I'm hot?"
Gross, 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 gross,
It's just
gross.
gross. It's very gross.
Um, there was a point where Inej, the conversation between Inej and Kaz, she, I don't know how to explain it other than she talks to him in a way that makes him stop putting on his act for a second. And then when they're done, he puts it back on and says something really cool and clever. And I was like, but everybody knows on this boat that you're pretending. You can give it
Mhm.
up, man.
Yeah.
Because you just look embarrassing now.
Mhm.
That guy who is really trying to convince himself that his lifted truck looks cool.
Yeah.
Even though all of his friends were like, this looks fucking, like, this is dumb.
Mhm. He's so insecure. Like, he does not know how to just be a person around other people because he's, like, spent so long creating this myth of himself, but it's not because she's done a good job of writing him that he has this conflicted nature of, like, I don't know how to be vulnerable around people. It's just
Yeah.
literally, like, I don't even know if he has the capacity to,
And
like, he doesn't have the depth.
yeah. And that's where it gets really confusing because I don't know if he's intended to be super insecure because of this act he puts on, or if because she writes him in like the perfect guy kind of way.
Mhm.
But how he is and how Leah clearly wants him to be are two very different things.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to know if she's aware of that. Like, does she know that he's that insecure? Because whenever she describes the flaws that he has, it's just that he doesn't know how to touch people without gloves on because he had a traumatic experience
Yeah.
using his brother's corpse as a boat. And from that point on, no skin to skin contact because it reminds him of the corpse boat of his brother. But she never really touches on, like, him not being able to be vulnerable with people on an emotional level,
It's
like,
just
and
what
then
tough
sh
guys do.
True.
Tough guys have got a wall up,
Yeah,
and I've never
and
let it
gloves
down for
on.
anybody. It's all very tired.
Yeah, and Ash is like, "I will have you with armor without armor, Kaz, or not at all." And then they part ways, and she's like, "Ooh, the wind is cold."
Yeah.
The wind is as cold as my heart.
And after that, we're back with Nina, who is now starting to go through her withdrawal.
Yeah,
And my only note for this chapter is that all of our main characters are in lightning self pity mode.
yeah.
Like, it is the most incredible uber self pity that has ever been.
Mhm.
Really digging deep for it.
And it just further adds to the toxicity between Matthias and Nina's dynamic where he's like, "We all carry our sins, Nina. I need you to live so I can atone for mine."
Ugh!
Like, way to make a person's existence about you.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Stay till the end." And he's like, "And after, and always." And then they decide they're gonna go on a road trip to Ravka if she ever gets out of this.
So many quotes in this book are clearly the kind of bait quotes, like Snape's always.
Don't even get me started on that. But you're right. It's just
Like the kind of quotes
ugh.
that she thought were going to have legs of their own. And it's like, you've already failed. If your plan was to write a quote like that, you've already blown it. Because that's not how it works.
Because it's so fucking like, you can tell she is doing it for that intent, like, it's so
Yeah.
obvious, like, anytime a character says something poignant, you can feel Leigh Bardugo's, like, energy writing it, being like, "Oh, this is
Yeah.
so fucking
It's such
good.
a
Can't
like,
wait to tell the girlies about this
ooh,
one."
I'm gonna have myself a glass of Pinot Grigio after this.
Yeah.
But now it's time for Jesper, who,
Or
of course,
Jasper.
he doesn't get much to do because because Nina's going through withdrawals and everybody is super traumatized by it, which struck me as odd because these are all
Yeah.
like street rat criminals who probably sell drugs, and yet they're all like horribly traumatized by the fact that one of their friends took an drug.
Yeah.
And I also noted that at this point they're still unmolested on their way back to Ketterdam.
Despite Fjorda having all those ships waiting for them.
Right.
Didn't they have ships? It was ships,
No,
right? It
it
wasn't
was
just
all just them standing on
transporters?
the docks.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Because
And
at least I was like, they didn't have, like, a fleet mobilized that
I
could have pursued them.
I wrote that it seemed like the Fjerdans were just taking the L. Like they had their entire cultural capital destroyed by a bunch of fucking idiot children. And they're just like, damn, they got away. Chalk that one up to an L, boys. It's time to start rebuilding. We really blew
Yeah,
it.
pack it in.
And then, is this when they. Yes, they get in contact with
Van Eck.
Van Eck.
What's the little island they go to? How is it pronounced? It's like Velguluk? Velgluk?
be
or
honest,
something.
don't know. Wasn't paying attention.
It doesn't really matter. They're going to, like, basically a sandbar.
Yeah, it's just a tiny little patch of dirt off the coast
Mhm.
of Kirch.
Kirch somewhere.
And when they show up, somehow, right? Somehow, they get a message to Van Eck, despite them
Like,
not
from
being,
who?
despite like, there's no mention of a bird that they're like, all right, go give it to him. There's no mention of like post by water, mailman on the little tugboat. No mention of that. They just said, did they get a message to him?
Yeah.
Okay, fine, sure. And then he's like, meet me at this island, 7 p.m. sharp, wear your best dress. See you guys there. Thanks for doing your job.
Mhm.
And now, when they get there, whole bunch of Stodwatch are waiting. And I'm like, writing's on the wall. They're gonna get betrayed. And they see the Stadwatch and they're like, nice, he's here. I'm like, God, you guys are fucking morons.
Mhm.
Why would you? They're here to make a handoff, and he's got like 100 guns. And you
Mhm.
guys think that this is normal? You deserve to
Yeah.
get took.
Yeah. They're like, "Oh,
And
it must mean it's official."
took they get. They turn up and they're like, where's our money? And he's like, give you money? Are you crazy? Look at all these guns I've got, you idiot. I'm gonna take what you've got and kill you.
But he brings the money, which I thought was weird. Like, he still went through all the trouble of bringing a trunk of coins,
Again,
$30 million worth of, like, gold bullion.
didn't think it through. And this is when the rest of the book flies off the fucking handle. To say that this last 2 chapters are some kind of cry for help or like a manic episode, it's completely insane. Because they get betrayed.
Mhm.
Vanek says, haha, I'm going to kill you and take the recipe so that I can create all the parem in the world because it's already out there. And at that point, I'm like, okay, then what was the point of all of this? If the recipe is already out there and everybody's already making it, then what was the point of this whole book?
Yeah, well, does he say that it's already out there?
Yeah,
Fuck. I didn't pick that up.
he
'Cause
said he said as soon as I found out about it, I bought up a bunch of Jurda fields,
right.
and now everybody's got it. And it's been kind of intimated the whole time because all those other, like those Su Li ones turned up and they were on the shit too.
Right, so he just wants to control the
Yeah,
world's supply of
he wants
parem.
to own all of it.
My god.
And then Kaz says, "Aha, you can't kill us." And he goes, "Okay, why?" And he says, "Because that is not uh Quaylon
Kuwei.
Kue Bayor Bolt.
Yolbire.
It's actually your son." And he goes, "No, it's not. That doesn't look anything like my son." He's like, "No, it really is me, Dad." And he's like, "My God, it is my son."
That's his voice.
And then, for whatever reason, he's like, "How come you're being such a dickhead, Dad?" And
Yeah,
he's
he
like,
was talking so much shit about his son before that. He's like, "I don't care if he dies. He can't
"Yeah,
read."
he can't even read." And then Kaz is like, "Oh my God, it all makes sense now because I read Waylon's letters that said if you can read this, I miss you and want you home." He was mocking him the whole time.
Yeah.
And they Waylon starts crying and screaming at his dad, who in turn starts screaming at him, and also Kaz, and everybody's like yelling at each other and having this like important family moment. And then Kaz is suddenly like, but the real reveal is that we were betrayed from the start. And everyone's like, oh, by who?
Oh. Oh, yeah.
And he turns around to Jesper and he goes, by you, Jesper. You betrayed everyone by telling some random dude in a casino that we were going to go on this trip. And he told Pekka Rollins.
Yeah. You told a
And
dime lion that you were gonna come into some big cash.
yeah, and I was like, what in the absolute flying fuck is happening in this book right now? It's
It's
like,
the end of the movie Clue, and it's multiple endings
yeah,
happening simultaneously as one ending.
it's the dramatic confrontation scene in a soap opera where everybody's like, and then it's also the end of Clue, and it's also the end of a Poirot movie where he like reveals all of the steps of the crime that had taken place in order in front of everybody.
But no sense is being made
No,
by anybody in any of these conversations. He's like, "I had Nina Taylor Weiland to look like Kue," even though there's no fucking way they could have accounted for that in their plan.
no,
And he's like, Wylan and I had a wager on you wanting to kill your son because he couldn't read or write. And then, like, we got Nina and Kue off the ship. So, like, because he gets these tide makers that are flying around in the air to like sink the ship. And everybody knows the plan except for Jesper. He's like, oh my God, you just killed my future boyfriend and also Nina. And then there's a moment where Jesper is like offended that Wyland now looks like Kue. He's like, "Ah, but you were, like, so much hotter before, and now
yeah.
I'm, like, not that into you."
And when Kaz is like, it was you, Jesper, you betrayed all of us, and it's all your fault. I can never trust you again. And then he stomps off.
Yeah, and
Keep in mind, they're on a tiny little island that's barely big enough for like 10 people, and he finds room to stomp off. And in that moment, everybody's super pissed at Jesper, but as soon as Kaz stomps off, everybody's fine. Like, they all forget about it. Because they're
what
cracking jokes about Kaz's scheming face. And I'm at
right?
this point, I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah, because like, Van Eck pulls out a fucking dog whistle, and all these, like, Grisha show up, and they're fighting,
Yeah.
and, like, all of these tide makers are coming in, and then there's a moment where Kaz they're like, Van Eck is like, "Kill everybody but Brecker." And Kaz makes the mistake of looking over at Inej, and Van Eck notices that he looked at Inej, and he's like, "Ha take the girl!" So they, like, take her, like, when in Van Helsing, when his wives show up,
Yeah.
it's like they swoop in and fly off with Inej, and they, like, kinda throw her around amongst themselves. And Kaz is like, "No, my girl!" And then they fly off and they disappear. They don't make any further attempts to continue killing the rest of the gang.
Yeah.
Like, I think Van X sails off, like, cackling in over the horizon, and he's like, "You have 1 week
Yeah.
to bring me the real Kuwei, otherwise she's gonna get it, and I'm also gonna tell everybody that you have him, so they all come after you." And then he does his scheming face, and everyone's like, "This is so fun."
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is like so exciting.
This is, like, so on brand for the dregs.
And I it was presented in a way that was borderline indecipherable
It was impossible to visualize what was going on.
because everything was happening at once. And it all felt like a giant run-on sentence that
Yeah.
had like 8 things happening within it.
Mhm.
And then that's the end of the chapter. And then we get the last chapter, which is a Pekka Rollins chapter, which for the audiobook was read by the man who did the voice of Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
and it was entirely wasted because he was doing a very weird Irish accent.
Interesting choice.
Yeah. And they explain the whole point of this Pekka Rollins chapter, I have to imagine, is that Leah Bardugo finally figured out what Kaz was doing with Pekka Rollins in the prison.
Yeah.
Which, might as well have just left it out, Leah. Because what Kaz was doing with Pekka Rollins in the prison was find him, open his cage, and go, I'm gonna let you out even though I should kill you. And he's like, okay, why? And he goes, just cuz. And Pekka's like, alright,
Okay.
cool. Gonna stand there all the time or what? And he goes, yeah, I'm leaving right now. But I just want you to know that it's me who let you out. And he goes, yeah, I saw you do it. Cool, okay. Alright. So we're done here? Yeah.
He
Yeah, I
lingers
guess
in
we're
the
done.
doorway.
And
That's why he took so long. He was just staring at him
yeah,
over the
he
door
realized
threshold.
what he'd done was super awkward, and he was trying to kind of backpedal his way out of it. And Pekka Rollins is just like, "I don't know you. Fuck you, kid. Get out of my face."
Mm-hmm.
But that was just the beginning, which is presented in Pekka Rollins remembering it. He's in his office in his building going, I remember when that stupid Brecker boy broke me out of prison and stood there like an awkward child.
Yeah.
Ah, that's how I'm home now. Book, are you listening? That's how I'm home here in Kirch again.
Oh,
Because
who could
Kaz
be at
let
the
me out.
door?
Yeah. What's that? A door. I'll go get it. And it turns out to be
Cat?
Kaz. The boy who
So
broke me out of
crazy.
prison? What are you doing here at the end of the book?
And why do you have like these strung out children with you?
Yeah. And he
Like, why did he
basically,
bring Nina?
I don't know. And the whole purpose of this chapter is that Cass is like, I'm cashing in my favor. Pekka
He's
Rollins
like,
is,
what
yeah,
favor?
what favor, bro? You let me out of prison for free, dog. You didn't make any kind of stipulation that this was tit for tat.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, you're gonna do it anyway. You're gonna give me money to go fight Van Eck and also something else? Go to Ravka?
He wants to get a message to the Ravkin capital
Right.
and have Pekka give him 200,000 Kruga.
Yeah.
And he's like, but then even though Pekka Rollins is his fucking arch nemesis like the reason that Kaz is alive is to kill and humiliate and ruin this man's life
Yeah.
in no particular order. Um, he gives him in exchange for the money his controlling shares in the Crow Club and Fifth Harbor, the empire he has dedicated his life to building to ruin Pekka Rollins' life with.
Yeah.
Huh?
Let me present you with an idea. Let's rewrite this last chapter. Still,
Okay.
we can still have it be from Pekka Rollins' perspective.
Okay.
But in this one, what if we have Kaz moping around in his crow club, right?
Mhm.
He just lost an edge. This whole deal went south. He is not 30 million Kruger richer. And he's moping, going, what the fuck am I gonna do?
Mhm.
Pekka Rollins shows up. Hey, Buckaroo, heard you had a bad day. Okay, what do you want? What do you want, Pekka Rollins? I don't want to talk right now. I've got a business proposition for you. I'll give you money, and all you gotta do is absolutely buttfuck Van Eck.
Mhm. But
Like,
Pekka's always like, "Don't go after the merchant council. They're the reason we are allowed to exist." He's like, "Why the fuck would you go
I
after
don't
them?"
look. I'm just spitballing here. Leah's the one who's got to blow it up and ruin it with her inability to form a cohesive plot.
Yeah. I mean, the setup you've created is far more natural than a man sitting in his office reminiscing about a
Right.
child who got him out of prison, only to have that child show up and make demands.
Because what a more poetic ending to have someone who is completely hell-bent on ruining this guy's life to in the end having to work for him. Not only is
Yeah.
it sequel bait, but it's a fun little twist. Instead of just going in there and demanding cash. It's so outrageously childish. And then
Yeah.
Peccarones is like, okay, I'll give you the money. Anyway, here you go. And then he looks out the window and goes, what a weird bunch of kids. Anyway, that's the end of the book, folks.
Yeah, and then he realizes that Kaz, like, pickpocketed him, and then he's
Oh,
bestowing upon Kaz, like, way too much credit. He's like, "There's something in that kid's eyes. I don't wanna see what
I
happens when it
forgot
gets
about
rid
that.
of its leash, when that demon inside of that boy comes out." And then he's, like, talking to his assistant, crony, someone else, and he's like, "I don't wanna be around, or I wouldn't wanna be Van Eyck."
Yeah, it's so outrageous because A, not once in that meeting does Kaz ever touch Peccarones,
No.
which is an important step to pickpocketing, I'm told. I feel
Yeah.
like there does have to be a touching to occur. They don't get close enough for
There's,
him
like,
to
a
reach.
desk in between them,
Right,
in my mind's eye,
because
which
it's
could
not
be
described
incorrect.
any otherwise.
No, and
Also,
because he's so averse to touching,
yeah.
how in the fuck it doesn't make sense.
And Pekka Rollins doing that thing where he's like, that son of a bitch. God, he's good at what he does. That, like, every enemy that Kaz has in this book at some point compliments him, but never to his face. It's always to the reader, where he's like, that Kaz is a real firecracker when it comes to crime and crime empires. It's so phony and clearly like Leah Bardugo just inventing, like putting words in these characters' mouths to make it seem like Kaz has a much more impressive reputation than he really does.
Yeah, because at every turn he's passing out
Yeah,
and he is losing control of the plan he had and poorly improving. Like, there's no point where the description of Kaz by other people and the book matches up to the Kaz that we know.
yeah, it's completely bonkers.
Yeah.
But that's the end of the book. We're done.
Yeah.
We're done, everybody.
A very lackluster ending to a very lackluster book.
I'm glad it's over.
Mhm.
But we get to. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's finish this. Finish it. And then we'll pick the next book. So,
Yeah.
for YouTube, bye, everybody. We're done. See ya. We'll see you in 2 weeks. No, 3. Bye.
Mhm.